Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and now it looks like things are somewhat back to normal. I just wish the week was better, but whatever. And this, it's Billboard BREAKDOwn.
I don't remember.
And here I thought the Hot 100 would have a hard slowdown. Apparently between the eruption of last season of Stranger Things, which I have not seen, and judging by some reviews, I got no interest in seeing either, that upcoming Zach Bryan album bomb, which if they don't take advantage of the lack of competition and streaming influx, it'll be a real missed opportunity, plus a few big A-listers pushing new singles, January is looking busier than I thought it would be. I mean, I'm certainly not complaining to have the year start off a little stronger, especially in comparison with the stagnation we saw last year. Even if the quality's not there, Billboard should at least be happy, until we look at our top 10. And while I Just Might by Bruno Mars is making that run for number 1 next week, right now it's still The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift holding the top spots thanks to still gaining on radio, retaking the top spot on sales, and strong streaming, if not the very top. Unfortunately, Ordinary by Alex Warren is right behind her at number 2, still somehow seeing radio gains, even if streaming and sales have slipped sharply, but not quite as badly as Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters down at number 3, which has got better sales and streaming, but lost on that radio margin. And really, I just feel bad for Olivia Dean with The Man I Need at number 4. Her streams are so solid, the radio growth is great, she's got sales, just not at the overwhelming volume it's gonna need to take to get higher against more competition. Although it is holding its own against Choosing Texas by Ella Langley at number 5, which slipped a little bit on sales but is rising on streaming and the radio. And this is where I also saw some noise that, yeah, she totally does indeed have more presence on Nashville radio than she might be given credit, where her lesser radio presence overall might be more linked to this not getting shipped to pop radio. It's not as much of a systemic issue, they would say. I would counter that by highlighting the folks currently above her on Nashville radio are that god-awful Blake Shelton song from last week and Parmalee. I think that makes my point for me. But here's where some of that Stranger Things impact is coursing through, as End of Beginning by Doechii leapt up off the return last week into the top 10 at number 6, taking the top spot on streaming, and with big sales, yeah, the radio's not touching it, but it's still pretty cool to see a good song get a second life. Hell, it got ahead of Folded by Kalani at number 7, which still has radio growth, but might be running out of gas in other channels. Even more true with Back to Friends by Somber down to number 8, which has considerably weaker streaming. Then to round it out, Opalite by Taylor Swift at number 9. It's getting some haphazard radio attention even as the streaming is sputtering. And Mutt by Leon Thomas hit number 10 because really all it has is radio at this point, and it is firmly on its way out. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts, which in the latter group were nearly all returns or new arrivals, with the most notable maybe Safe by Cardi B and Kalani. That's not saying a lot there, but it does explain why there's more chart activity trying to fill in the gaps. And we got a pretty healthy array of losers here, so let's start off with a couple from Peso Pluma and Tito Double P as the album impact faded away. Dopamina at 78 and Dano at 88. While we're on the topic of new arrivals, throw on It Won't Be Long by George Burge, and he just can't sustain any traction. Then we got the returns losing, and not complaining that Heart of Stone by Jelly Roll fell back to 97, and Darwin by Chase Matthew hit 80, and a pretty wide swath of gains sliding back as well, like Tears by Sabrina Carpenter at 53, Shot Callin' by Youngboy Never Broke Again at 58, Take Me Through Dare by Metro Boomin, Quavo, Bresky, and YK Nice at 65, Cowgirl by Parmalee at 68, higher on Nashville radio than Choosing Texas right now, which is in the Billboard Top 5, want to emphasize that. Eternity by Alex Warren at 74, 3 AM by Low Shimmy and Don Tolliver at 82, and Sugar on My Tongue by Tyler the Creator at 84. The only song that didn't move much last week but saw losses, ironically, it's Mr. Recoup by 21 Savage and Drake. That feels apropos. And hey Drake, calling that next album Iceman, it's something you should reconsider. All I'm saying. Now the returns and gains, let's start off with the latter group, because outside of Doechii, there's not many, and they're quite frankly all bad news. Die on This Hill by Sienna Spiro just continues to aggravate me up to 54, and it's paired with What an Awesome God by Phil Wickham at 86. In my opinion, neither of these should be charting at all. And speaking of songs I don't like, in our returns we got more bad Christian music with Dusty Bibles at 98, followed by Fame is a Gun by Addison Rae at 94. Joy. At least Zara Larsson of all people is seeing some unexpected viral bounce back with Lush Life of all things back at 70. As a longtime fan of that song from the mid-2010s, I'm not complaining. But seeing Zara Larsson getting a sudden critical rebound has been a little bit weird. More on this later. Especially with all the critical acclaim thrown at Midnight Sun's direction. I may have to actually investigate if any of it actually charts. But the big story, again, is tied to Stranger Things, because not only is Runnin' Up That Hill by Kate Bush back big at 46, we got Purple Rain by Prince recharting at 27. And look, I'm not going to complain that a classic song is taking an early spotlight, even if it's from a TV series that long burned any goodwill with me. It's well deserved. Even if there's a part of me that knows deep down Prince would have never allowed this to be licensed if he was alive, and that is something that's niggling. But before we get into the other song tied to Stranger Things, where I was actually shocked it never hit the charts before, even if other covers of it have, we got our new arrivals. Interestingly, starting with number 100, Stateside by PinkPantheress and Zara Larsson.
Is it right? I don't know. Yeah, you taking my control. Never been abroad before, but I'm knocking through your door.
So here's a quandary. I like PinkPantheress. I like seeing her cross over Stateside more often, pun only partially intended. But it just so happens that this time it's with the worst song from Fancy That. And given how short that mixtape was, it's annoying that they're going to this instead of Stars or Romeo or Tonight. But this is the one that got the remix with Zara Larsson, so before we get to that, let's start with the original, and I don't even think it's that bad. The flip of Estelle's American Boy alongside the shuffling, buzzy warps and the synth pulse as she longs for that American boy, it's generally fine, the hook's sticky, but the dismissive, non-communicative attitude that the guy is showing her as she just breathes heavily through it always kind of left a weird, sour taste in my mouth. So now with the Stateside remix featuring Zara Larsson, in comparison with the ones from Blade, Groove Animals, or goddamn Kylie Minogue, and wow, how is this worse? The production has become this lumbering, undulating, blocky mess of synth farts on loan from the rejects of 2009. And Zara Larsson is playing up her exasperation and trying to sustain a relationship from her home country in Sweden down to Los Angeles, where her post-chorus is now blowing off some American guy. I mean, it's conceptually more interesting, but PinkPantheress playing down her ego while Larsson inflates hers in the face of newfound popularity just makes it feel so lopsided to me. So no, it sadly isn't good. In fact, I call it worse than the original. Thankfully, next up, number 99, I've Seen It by Olivia Dean.
And ending tears, I've seen it off the school and in the park. Sat right across me on the tube. Seen it miss a stop or two. Seen it trying not to fall apart.
I gotta give Olivia Dean's marketing and promotional team the side eye at this point. I'm happy that The Art of Loving is getting the weirdest possible promo run. It reminds me a lot of when Chappell Roan would get increasingly deeper cuts from the rise and fall of the Midwest Princess to chart. But I'd rather have a few singles be very sustainable and take the top spot rather than just dally near the very bottom every other week, especially when Olivia Dean's deeper cuts weren't always the strongest. Now this is one such case, and again, it's not so much the song is bad as it's just nowhere near as good as it should be. A soft guitar ballad with some gentle synths where she muses on seeing so many of the ups and downs in love and life and media and not fully understanding love until she expresses and experiences it and realizes it was inside her all along. And sure, it's a sweet observation, the pattern's nice, but it and the poetry around it feels oddly undercooked when the song barely runs 2 minutes with no hook, and you realize it's the album closer? Really? No other observations that might cut deeper? That's it? I mean, you run a real risk of exposing the shortfalls in Olivia Dean's prim execution and formula if more underpowered songs come to light. So while it's fine, it was a weak album closer, and it's on its own. I can't say it fares better. Number 96, Don't Kill the Party by Dolla featuring Quavo and Juicy J.
Don't kill the party, please. I'm up, so pardon me. She swears she went for me. When I push up, I part the seat.
This is one of those cuts where I really wish I didn't have the obligation to do research ahead of time, because the first thing I found out about this was that it was intended for Vultures 3 with Kanye West, which has been something that longtime fans have apparently been searching for in some leaked form or another for well over a year now, because apparently quality might make them break out in hives. And as someone who has largely ignored Dolla since then, truthfully his whole feature killer reputation has felt more like smoke and mirrors to me as the 2010s became the 2020s, especially with that 2020 album, and his long delayed 2025 album Tycoon was never requested, and I had zero expectations for this, and that was absolutely justified. This is a mess. Let's start off with the chilly murk of the synth and the oily squeals behind the overweight trap percussion, where everything sounds a lot more compressed than it should be as Benny X flips the creepy 3-6 Mafia sample into something even more cold and turgid that doesn't really fit any party vibe. Incidentally, that's the only fragment of Juicy J that we actually get here. There's no verse. And I'm sorry, didn't Dolla used to actually have some soul to his delivery, not doing this stale plea for the party to not die as he's trying to get girls naked and blowing him, including your girl who just won't get off of them because apparently she's a leech? I mean, sure, Quavo's flow is a little sharper, but his talk of trying to reconstruct this bad bitch starts feeling sleazy in a really underhanded way. A song for the guys who are not invited to the house party, but show up anyway and make every girl really uncomfortable by getting way too sexual when they're there. So yeah, I don't like this either. It's pretty bad. Next, number 81, You Stole the Show by Sienna Spiro.
Before we get closer, I ask if you love me, and you just shrug your shoulders.
Okay, bad first impression aside, where again I heard the pushback, I expect more of my power ballads and the sour belligerence of Die on This Hill, I was willing to give Sienna Spiro another shot with her next crossover push, and okay, another piano ballad accented with elegant strings. Not exactly a great sign if you want to avoid getting pigeonholed, but at least the vocal mix feels more competent. As the rustier sharpness in her delivery, it's better supported at least. But the content, okay. On the surface, there's a solid emotional through line where she got enamored by someone's performance of love and attraction that took over her life, but that's all it was to him, a performance, where he just shrugs his shoulders and moves on. Of course, that doesn't mean she leaves. She's enamored by that performative intensity. She keeps going back even though he stole the show from her. And that's apparently something she's realized. Apparently in the writing process, she figured out that the majority of the songs were about the unresolved feelings, and she imagined herself going back to that raw place, sing it to this guy, and the fact that this is the clearly not over any of it results, I think that's revealing. It's not just that he stole the show, it's that he's still stealing it. So there's no catharsis, just self-aware self-destruction. I don't know, I guess there's a place for that, but man, I got less than zero interest in actually hearing it. Still not impressed. Number 57, Girl Get Up by Doechii SZA.
No confrontation, fuck a limitation, leave me girl, get up. Someone know it all, everything is mine.
I'm gonna do something a little bit different when talking about this. I'm gonna try to ignore the whole Aiden Ross response of it all, where he wasn't even mentioned by name in her call out of people calling her an industry plant, and then he proceeded to humiliate himself. For the record, I condone and endorse him facing all the consequences of his words and actions. Some folks need to be seen by the right people, and it's long overdue with him. But what's bothered me is that it's drawn attention from the actual song Doechii and SZA have. Where going back to the EP She Her Black Bitch in 2022, I really like the pairing, even if SZA's just handling the hook. I mean, Persuasion was a great song. This might actually be better. I like the softer clicking patter around the muted synth, where that bass pulse ramps up within Doechii's verse to subtly amplify her points. I like SZA trying to be a little bit more meditative in her ascent, trying not to lash out as often. And I really like how Doechii effectively counters a lot of bad narratives around her, not only credibly reestablishing how unbothered she is, and I believe her, but also following it with accurate callouts of those who are bitter enough to deny her grind, while also pushing back on those who only like Doechii because they think that she's not being sexual in comparison with a lot of other women in rap, which is not only misogynistic bullshit, it's also not true if you've heard Doechii's albums. Now, I don't love the whole I'm anointed to this arc that can surround some of Doechii's come up on this track. Kendrick Lamar got some of this too from TDE, and not only do I think it can be bad for the artist, as Kendrick would admit on record himself, but also not really representative of how the machine of the music industry works. Like, TDE has that machine too, especially when I think there has been missteps in the promo and brand. Nissan Altima should have been a hit, goddammit. I mean, I'd take that over Anxiety. But still, if this is Doechii getting back on business, I'm all ears. It's really good. Worth a second listen. Number 41, Landslide by Fleetwood Mac.
'Cause I built my life around you, but you know time makes you bolder, even children get older, and I'm getting older too.
Yeah, really. The song that sold millions of copies before now, with multiple versions of the song charting on the Hot 100 after 1975, from the Chicks' cover that broke the top 10 to the Glee cast version that peaked just below the top 20. And you might ask why it's only on the Hot 100 now, and technically, a Fleetwood Mac version of this song did chart before, in 1997, a live version that was released as a single, but the original recorded song from that self-titled album was never pressed as a single, and for decades, Billboard only let songs that were considered singles reach the charts. But that was a different time, and now I'm expected to provide thoughtful insight on an absolute classic where people call this one of the greatest songs of all time, and yeah, I can't really disagree. I love the soft cycling acoustics, the gentle electric guitar solo, and Stevie Nicks' husky singing where she's staring into the deep-seated fear of actually ending a relationship where you've built up your life around someone, and changing that can feel far bigger, more implacable, where if your voice is loud enough, the avalanche can just wipe everything away. There's a sad tragedy in that. I've always loved how acknowledging time well in music can give it such weight, and the hook here is just masterful in acknowledging who gets older. That said, I'll admit there are a couple small choices from the Chicks' cover of the song that I really love. The heavier twang, the harmonies, the acoustic solo, the coos and murmurs of maybe that might not have the same stark intimacy, but really reflect trying to gently nudge the acknowledgement of all of it being over in the right time. It's subtle, but the songs mean different things, and both really work. Either way, I've loved this for decades. I'll appreciate Stranger Things finally bringing this back properly, if for that and little else. And finally, number 29, Internet Girl by KATSEYE.
Eat zucchini. Do you read me? Like the emoji? I want you, I want you, I want you.
Really? We gotta end with this? I don't want to keep acknowledging KATSEYE as a thing. I don't have the greatest pulse on K-pop, but I can hear the dearth in quality compared to better acts doing what they do. Especially when you got Mattman and Robin behind the production and writing, and Justin Tranter. What the hell are you doing here? You actually have talent and established hits in your name. And we gotta start with the production here, all over compressed and sorely bereft of melody outside of the occasional twinkle as the rubbery drums and grainy slurry of noise and distended extended blobs are pressed over the mix. And that's where we get the baby voice sample and the repeated eat zucchini, which, okay, look, I've seen some say that it's a comment on diet culture for women online, but that would assume some sophistication on the part of the songwriters, which I don't remotely believe. It's saying suck my dick. And that's the thing with this song. I can see the people who are bending over backwards to try to say that it's empowering, that this is the way to ride out being a woman online, flirtatious, daring you to take the screenshot, but also how it's all toxic and you should probably get the hell out, or just throw back brash energy in the bad guys' faces. But there's nothing confrontational about the attitude that's on display. It's playing for a lot of cutesy, kawaii vibes, where you just know for some the whole eat zucchini line, Rule 34 is now in effect, especially when the one woman contributing writing behind the scenes feels more anonymous than ever. Her name's Livy Frank. She had a few EPs late 2000s, and she's worked behind the scenes on a lot of bad album cuts in the early 2010s, and a lot with Coldplay of all people in their pop pivot before co-writing this. I mean, I know some people might think this is just one big piss take, but the joke runs out of gas really fast, the hook is dumb as all hell and not in the good way, and nothing else here is worth praising. Yeah, this sucks. And sadly, that's our week. Wow, I was really hoping for more and better here, but at least the best and worst fall out fast, with Landslide by Fleetwood Mac obviously running away with the best, and Girl Get Up by Doechii SZA as the honorable mention. No real surprise. The worst, more than what I expected here is competition, but let's give it to Don't Kill the Party by Dolla and Quavo. I'm not dignifying Juicy J was on that. While Internet Girl by KATSEYE gets the dishonorable mention. Only barely. Next week, if we're lucky, it's a Zach Bryan album bomb, pretty sizable too. We'll have to see how it all goes down. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.